Hey everybody, this is Perch. Let's read this mail. This is a mail that's a bit it's open to opinion. It's subjective, in other words. It says, "Hey Perch, I was on the CBR message boards and there was a conversation about your favorite topic: is Bobby Drake gay?" That is okay. That is not my favorite topic. I'm frustrated by that topic in the sense of it's a clear retcon. And what's weird about it is this, and this is how I can always tell if I'm arguing against somebody who's disingenuous or not. Well, is that I say, in my view, look, it was not always designed to be this way. It's clear from the writing that Bobby Drake was not always intended to be gay. Brian Michael Bendis ran with, some online things and just kind of other panels, but that was not the original intent. It's very clear from the comics. I also say, it's Marvel's choice of what to do. And I frankly, I know many of you disagree, but take this as a long-term X-Men fan here talking. I don't get that fussed over them doing that. It's their character. They get to decide, it's fine. If I'm bothered by the continuity break. I'm not bothered by you can't make gay characters. I'm bothered by the fact that it retcons a lot of stuff and it just doesn't make sense in context of the full story. Not bothered, don't mind that he's gay. I'm bothered by the approach and probably more bothered by the people who try and gaslight you into saying, it was always this way. You just didn't notice. No, I read. So, I did notice. But when I say things like that, I usually get one of two responses, and it tells me a little bit about the person I'm dealing with. Response number one is, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's over. It's like, yeah, the whole Opal thing. I mean, definitely it was clear. They were going with love of his life there and other things and some of the other relationships. Yeah, no, it makes sense. But people change. Okay, I'm willing to sign on to that. Sure, people change. I mean, willing to sign on to the deep down the feelings were there, and he began to explore them a different way later, and all the rest. But it doesn't negate what happened before, basically. That's a person who's at least dealing with honesty. And then there's the other person, the other personality type, which does the no, no, you're just not accepting the signs. That it was always this the person who gets very angry at bringing this stuff up. The person who gets very angry at bringing this stuff up is a person who is not out for story and just trying to, quote unquote, own the chuds or whatever the phrase of today is. That's a different person you're arguing with. Anyway, not my favorite topic, but to me, it's very simple. It's not actually worth a lot of time. I've been spending more time on this than any human sane person should spend on this topic. But anyway, but there you go. So back to the mail. Let's see. In this thread, there's a conversation about was Bobby always gay? And in the thread, people started using the argument, art is open to interpretation. You don't get to tell people how they interpret art. Do you think this applies to comics or not? I understand the premise, but this isn't art. This is a story. Stories can be art. This isn't art. This is a story. So I'm not sure this really applies. What do you think? All right. So the topic, okay. And thank you very much. The basic question here is the phrase, and you probably, I'm sure you all heard it. It is the, art is open to interpretation, or basically, art is meant to be interpreted by every reader, every consumer of that art, and they have the rights to their opinion, the rights to the interpretation. And I say, yeah, of course. I mean, to me, there's a little bit of the logic to this, and on both fronts. First, obviously, people can interpret things however they want. It's a free country. Nobody's going to force you to read something or look at something or view something. If you look at the Mona Lisa and say, I think this is a piece of shit, bad painting, you're welcome to do that. Nobody's going to mind police you to say you have to love it. Hope not, anyway. But it's your desire, it's your taste. You get to pick. However, if you say things like, "I don't like this painting. I think it's shitty. The artist clearly didn't have any talent, and they clearly didn't put a lot of effort into this." That can be your opinion. You're welcome to it, but your opinion is also wrong. Parts of that are objectively wrong. The idea of like this artist didn't have talent. The artist clearly did have talent. Now you may not like the way that talent creates art. You may not like the style, but that's a different statement that this person has no talent, or this was done in a hurry. It didn't take any time is also objectively wrong. We know that it did take him out a lot of time. We know that effort was put into this. So I think there's aspects to this that are you're welcome to your own opinion, but you're not welcome to your own opinion being correct. Your opinion on style, on personal preference, on personal taste makes sense, but on the other bits, no. You don't get to just have complete free reign over reinventing how things are. That doesn't work. And when it comes to comics, I think a similar thing is true, because people have said that before on, for example, the Bobby Drake thing. It's like, well, it's open to interpretation. Not really. Whether you like the characters, sure, you're welcome to have your own, interpretation of the art and what they're saying. But there are some definitive things that, a story is still a story. And when it states something, you can choose to ignore or not believe something. But that's different from having your own, interpretation. For example, if you believe, like, what, I don't care what anybody else says. Captain America is a Nazi. Captain America, I know he fought in World War II, but my belief is when, off panel, Captain America was secretly helping the Germans. And, that Nick Spencer story was pretty much exactly right. And, he was, Captain America is actually a Nazi. If you look at the way, like, he's also a racist. Captain America is a racist. And if you look at, like, look, he got his little, like, servant, the Falcon, to kind of, fly around with him. And, he's a racist. You're welcome to that opinion, but that doesn't mean your opinion is correct. It's not. You don't just get to change the narrative at will because it maps how you want to believe the character is. You can believe anything you want to believe, but it doesn't make you right. This came up in one of the recent video about Ranma 1/2 and trans rights and things with the reboot. And I like I said in that video, I'm a big fan of Ranma 1/2. I watched this series back in the 80s. I read it. I loved it. It's a great series. It was not written, drawn, created as an allegory for trans rights. It was not. How do we know that? The creator has said so directly, multiple times. That was not the intent of what she was doing. It was meant to be a silly comedy. Now, if you find yourself, if you are trans and you find inspiration in that manga, fine. If you find hope, you find kinship with that character, all the rest, it helps you with your situation. It helps you come to understand who you are. All fine. But when you say things like, this was always meant to be a trans story, again, that's your opinion, but it is wrong. That is incorrect. Art doesn't get to be just randomly reinvented from decade to decade. Your interpretation of it, you can interpret it any way you want, but interpretation is not fact. Saying this hits me in a certain way, I like this, this is again, it goes back to personal preference. I think the problem we're having in 2024 is increasingly people are not satisfied with just saying this is my personal preference on things. And instead, it's become my personal preference equals the one true ring, the one true way it is, the fact. And that's the challenge. And you see almost this step into it process people use where it starts out as, hey, interesting fandom you got there. I'd like to be part of it. Hey, my interpretation of fandom is this way. Hey, my interpretation of the fandom must be respected. hey, my interpretation of the fandom is the law, is what it is. If you have a different interpretation, you don't get to belong in the fandom. It's that last piece, because that's always seems to be always where it slides to. It's not enough to just say, this is what I like, this is my preference. It becomes, if you don't feel that way, you don't get to be part of it. There is a lot of exclusionary tactics with it. And there's a lot of, again, it's somewhere between disingenuous and gaslighting that goes on with this stuff, where it starts out, happy, innocent, and it starts out like, what? This is for everyone. Everyone should get to enjoy this. I agree. Everyone should get to enjoy it. Totally agree with that. But then slowly it morphs to if you don't enjoy it the way I enjoy it, if you don't interpret it the way I interpret it, if you don't view the facts the way I view the facts, then, you don't get to belong. And that's where it takes us a step forward. And with written works, with books, with things where the creator, the people involved, definitively say, this is what this means. Or, the Captain America example. Captain America is not a Nazi. He's not a racist. Again, if you want to interpret that way, I guess you can, but you also get to be wrong. And what you don't get to do is say, he's racist, he's always been racist, that's what I believe, he's a Nazi. And so when we talk about Captain America, you have to respect, in my opinion, that he's a Nazi equally with people who believe, he was a soldier for the Allies in World War II and got frozen in ice. You have to respect them equally. You can't respect them equally. They're incongruent. You can't. Same thing with Ranma. You can't come in and say, well, this has always been intended as a trans rights story. No, the author distinctly, directly says the opposite. Directly. Again, it helps you out. Cool. That's what you want to believe because it makes sense to you. It hits you in that way. Cool. It's like if for you, Requiem for a Dream is a lighthearted comedy. Cool. But, if you work in not there's video stores, if you work in a, in a store where you're stocking this stuff, or if you're creating the online catalog for HBO Max, you don't put Requiem for a Dream in the comedy section or in the kids section. It's not that kind of movie. No matter how funny you think it is, it doesn't belong there. That's there's interpretation, but there's also fact. And, people mix up and blur those two. So the Bobby Drake thing, I mean, that's an example of if you interpreted his writing always that way, again, cool. No, you shouldn't be excluded from reading comics. Nobody should come around and say you don't get to read X-Men anymore. And people shouldn't come at you and say, you're so horribly wrong. I hate you. You don't get to belong. I mean, nothing should be used to exclude people, but at the same point, it should be used to exclude people the other direction either. If you don't believe Bobby Drake was always gay because you read, then you shouldn't be labeled a bigot for that. And by the way, saying that a character was retconned does not automatically make you a hateful person, because comic characters are retconned constantly. It's not. That's what kind of cracks me up about that argument. It's like, oh my God, whoever would have suspected that in comics they would have retconned a character? What dire villainy is this? I mean, seriously? I mean, this happens constantly. It's very much a part of comics, is the reimagining of origins on a constant basis. So anyway, I don't like the phrase, and I mostly don't like it when it's used, where when somebody says, here's something that's going on, they state an opinion, and then the people who come back with comics or art is open to interpretation. It's like, that's not an answer. That's not a counter argument. That's just that's like somebody who says, I don't have any actual good proof to justify what I'm saying, so I'm just going to go with anything can be imagined at any point by anyone at any time, and there are no facts. That's just ridiculous. So anyway, thank you very much for the mail. What do you think? Art. I mean, look, you know what? I was going to say, look, if we want to live in a world where we just get to reimagine things constantly all the time, every time, we can certainly do that. But we can't certainly do that, because that's not how facts work. You can't just reimagine the world constantly. It just doesn't work. History, the expression "history is set in stone" is there for a reason. When people write things and they create comics, that's their mentality of what they were doing at the time is what it was. It's just, that's the fact. And you can build from that. You can alter it. You can move it in a new direction, but you can't go back and claim something that was definitive was always meant to be something else. That doesn't make sense. Anyway, thanks for listening.